station, Manx Radio.
This is Judith Lay welcoming you to Manx Radio and to the podcast of this week's edition of At Your Service.
Manx Radio.
On today's programme, three very different people talk about an international charity making a difference by going where others will not. And we pay tribute to the Church of England priest who claimed to be unable to sing or write music, yet has left a legacy of more than 450 hymns. And this is the first one he wrote. Tell Out My Soul, the Greatness of the Lord was written in 1961 and can be found in at least 220 modern hymn books. But it was written by a man who said, "I'm totally unmusical, I can't sing in tune and often change key without even knowing it." But what the Right Reverend Timothy Dudley Smith did have was a love of poetry and an understanding of metre and rhythm, all underpinned by a sound Bible knowledge. His words are sung to long-established, very singable melodies, but he seemed to get his best inspiration on the annual family holiday to Cornwall each year, getting up early in the mornings and sometimes musing over his notes while sitting on the beach. For the last 10 years of a long and varied ministry, Timothy Dudley Smith was Bishop of Thetford in the Diocese of Norwich. He retired in 1991 and died earlier this month, aged 97, and there'll be another hymn by him later in the programme. But now it's time to go travelling. Papua New Guinea is in the Pacific Ocean. It's subject to earthquakes, tidal waves, and has active volcanoes. 80% of the population live in rural areas. Many people live in the mountainous interior of the country. They don't use money, but depend upon agriculture to survive, eating what they can grow. There are no roads, just tracks suitable only for walking, or dangerous river crossings by canoe. These are massively risky options for sick people and pregnant women. Unsurprisingly, many babies and their mothers die, often after developing sepsis soon after giving birth. But these cut-off communities can be reached by air, and the international charity Mission Aviation Fellowship has, for almost 80 years, been using light aircraft to reach the world's most isolated and disadvantaged communities, bringing access to food, disaster relief, medical aid, education, livelihood support, church and mission groups, and much more. Mission Aviation Fellowship now fly light aircraft in more than 25 countries, reaching more communities than any other airline. Today we find out about Mission Aviation Fellowship's work in Papua New Guinea. We get a snapshot of everyday life in the country from 11-year-old Isaac, and we explore the link between the country, the charity and the Isle of Man. So let's start with that local link. In December last year, local business AFD Software, known as the Postcode People, announced that to celebrate their 40th year in business, they would be donating a brand new Cessna Caravan aircraft to Mission Aviation Fellowship. It's a new type of plane which will be based in Papua New Guinea and will enable Mission Aviation Fellowship to offer a more agile, reliable and efficient service. AFD Software company directors, husband and wife David and Alison Doricott, went travelling earlier this year and had the chance of a stopover at the Mission Aviation Fellowship base at Mount Hagen in Papua New Guinea and to see their work at first hand.
It was unplanned at the time. We booked it, layover in PNG, and we took the opportunity to go to Mount Hagen, and we actually got to fly into some of the terrain, land on some of the impossible runways, watched a village who were hand digging an extension to the runway to make it more usable, 800 people hand digging for 6 years, and standing there with tears in our eyes at the enormity of importance that village community was seeing to aviation, bringing them. And we also had the privilege of flying the first villager from that village over the hill in a 10-minute hop. He was the first villager to complete higher education, and he was now the deputy headmaster of the secondary school that is there and only able to be there by the MAF team. And that makes it really memorable and exciting. On this little island, thousands of miles away, this little software company is able to make a massive difference with our money, with our time, with our prayer, to what MAF have been doing for over 70 years in PNG. This is not a new project. These guys have been there for the long haul, and a few years ago they celebrated their 70th anniversary. So, yeah, absolutely great. It's a strange thing. What you think is the main cargo of the flights would surprise you. Sometimes it's just the ordinary things. Yes, the exciting things like medical evacuations, really important. But actually, just some basic staples. The storeroom at Mount Hagen was full of Maggi chicken-flavoured instant noodles to be flown out to some of the villages. And it sounds really funny, but, we'd go down to the Co-op or Tesco's and pick up these things. You just can't do that when it's a 3-day trek through the jungle, even to get to the next village. And the high school only exists because the MAF planes can bring in stationery. We took in tuna and rice. A Kiwi flyer came in from another MAF base. She was bringing books and stationery for the school. So it really is the everyday as well as the exceptional.
But the bottom line is, whether it is the exceptional or the everyday, the whole balance is transforming lives. Going back to that picture that you gave us, just in a sentence, of 800 people digging the runway for 6 years tells you how important it is.
They taught us a lot about personal motivation, commitment, desire. There is one runway the village were building for 60 years. It just opened for the first time last year and now is connected to the outside world. The network that MAF provide make it possible to bring education, to bring medical help, to evacuate people in emergency, to bring relief and treatment, to give hope. But it's always fascinating also for us to note that all these villages have churches. They want to show you the church. They worship Jesus, and that's a great importance to them. And now we're not flying in foreign missionaries anymore. We're bringing in local pastors, local teachers, local Bible translators. Because of the topography, almost every different village community has a different language. And if you're able to bring them scripture in their heart language, that's another really important aspect. There is a sort of unifying pidgin English that people use if they're talking to people from other villages, but their heart language, to read scripture and hear scripture preached in their heart language, is really precious. If your neighbour, your relatives, your friends are able to talk to you in the language you know about the place you know and interpret the gospel in the culture you know, How precious is that? We take it for granted on this island where we've had Christian witness here for 1600, 1700 years. We go around to the wonderful churchyards and look at those Celtic crosses. We go and pray the keels. We know that those Celtic Christian saints have been here, and we thrive in that spiritual ambience. In some of these countries, 70, 80 years ago, there were cannibal communities fighting one another. I'm not saying all the tribal conflict has necessarily died down. It hasn't. That can be a challenge for a project like MAF, but actually the fact that you can fly in and out quickly sometimes enable you to be there in the first place. And in some parts of Africa, that's really important.
This isn't the first plane David and Alison Doricott have donated to Mission Aviation Fellowship. The Kodiak aircraft they donated in 2009 has been doing life-changing work ever since in the remote areas of Kalimantan in Borneo. So when might this second plane be ready for work?
The plane is almost completed manufacture now. Textron, who makes Cessna planes, will complete its production in the next few weeks. Then it will go to be adapted for its bush role, because the Cessna isn't designed as a bush aircraft. It's adapted for that, and that's important. You have to do things to the suspension. You have to fit special safety seats. You have to do a few things about the fueling system and other technical stuff. And then it will cross the Pacific to go into service maybe by the end of the year. Sadly, because of various operational reasons, that plane won't be coming this way like our Kodiak did, and which you'll remember coming in 2009. But obviously good stewardship means we don't waste money just bringing it this way just so we can look at it at Derby. But we'll do some other things to celebrate it, and you'll hear more from us on that one in due course, and it'll maybe be another interview. There's a little bit of a challenge, of course, in that where PNG is along a lot of time zones out from the Isle of Man. So watching its first landing in Papua New Guinea may be challenging, or you may be up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m, but we'll do something.
I'm absolutely sure we will do something to mark the arrival of the new plane at Mount Hagen in Papua New Guinea. Two people with first-hand knowledge of the country visited the island recently, and I had the chance to talk with Mission Aviation Fellowship staff member Dom Sant and his 11-year-old son Isaac. Dom, his wife Sequoia and their 3 children live in Papua New Guinea. In a few moments, Dom will join us to talk about his work. But first, let's hear from Isaac as he tells his story. I began by asking him how long he'd lived in PNG, Papua New Guinea.
We've been there for roughly 2.5 years now.
Tell me what it's like.
Well, you have dirt roads and it's very dusty everywhere. You have panelled windows. You have to have fly netting round the windows and iron grills round the windows to stop rocks coming in. The houses aren't very big, but they can house a family of substantial numbers.
So how many people in your family, Isaac?
Here in Isle of Man, me and my dad are here, but my 2 sisters and my mum have gone to Singapore back to PNG.
What's schooling like in Papua New Guinea?
Well, if anyone from PNG is listening, do not be offended. Schooling is not great, but we get by on it. But my mum will now be homeschooling me when we get back to PNG. My sisters are both older than me, are now going to a boarding school.
So what about making friends? Are there other young people around where you live?
Yes, there are other young people. I live next to 2 other compounds, and there are 3 other boys my age, which I enjoy playing with. We are similar, like we all enjoy playing outside and making up new games and playing them. But we also do all play Minecraft. Maybe 3 times a week, go around to one of our friend's house, and we all play for 20 minutes or something, then go back outside.
What about wild animals and creepy crawlies? What do you have to be careful of?
Well, it's not like Africa. You don't have big, giant beasties. The biggest thing we have is something similar to an emu, and it is ferocious, very ferocious, blue, and has kind of a red horn on its head. We also have things similar to wallabies, but they're called tree kangaroos. They're marsupials, and it's kind of a mix between kangaroos and koalas. We also have a huge amount of creepy crawlies, giant spiders, snakes. We don't have venomous snakes. We don't have scorpions, but we do have snakes. On some occasions, we have seen snakes on walks.
The creepy crawly kind of things, do you have to be careful to keep them out of the house, or do they mostly want to keep away from you?
Well, there's an animal called a banana spider, which kind of stands its ground because it knows you're not going to hurt it, but its vision isn't great, so it probably can't see you. But skinks, which are lizards that lose their tail when they're scared. We also get lizards, very long ones, not like giant Komodo dragon things, like small, annoying lizards that just go into your house and hide from the light.
It's great talking to you, Isaac, because you've picked up so much that is around you, and it's very interesting to talk to you. Do you enjoy reading?
I read quite a lot.
And that feeds your imagination, doesn't it?
Yes, it does a lot. That's how I'm able to invent most of the games me and my friends play.
Do you enjoy writing stories or anything like that?
I do write a couple of stories. I've tried to get into it, but I move around a lot and I can't stick to one thing. My sister loves crocheting. She tried to teach me. I could not do a single bit.
A little snapshot of family life in a very different land. Thank you, 11-year-old Isaac Sant. Let's hear now from Isaac's father, Dom Sant, who's been working at Mission Aviation Fellowship's base at Mount Hagen since the family moved to Papua New Guinea in 2022. This is his story.
So I am the safety and security manager for MAF in PNG. So a pilot can't just turn up and decide to fly a plane. There's lots of rules and regulations, and part of my role is making sure that we are keeping in with the regulations.
How difficult is that?
It's a challenge. There is a lot of them. We have a very mature regulator in PNG that we have to adhere to the rules. There's a lot of airstrips and a lot of unknowns within the country that we could turn up at an airstrip and there could be things that we weren't expecting to see there on an airstrip. They don't call Papua New Guinea the land of the unexpected for no reason. There are a number of things that could go wrong. There are lots of things that we have to mitigate against. So you'll have heard maybe in the news there was a lot of fuel shortages and things like that in Papua New Guinea. So there's lots of things that we have to mitigate and lots of challenges we can come across. But a pilot will plan his journey. One of the challenges is getting the aid to the place that we are going to fly it from. We fly from hubs into remote places. But we have 266 airstrips across the country, and all of them need to be surveyed. They all need to be managed so that we can make sure that the plane is going to be safe when we land there.
266 airstrips is a lot to take care of.
Yes, we train agents in the local communities, so they actually get a slight income as well from working for MAF, and they will liaise with the local community. They will understand what size bags and how heavy they are, how many people, where they want to go, and they will communicate then through HF radio with our command centre in Mount Hagen, who can then plan all the flights.
And does it work as smoothly as you have described it?
I think to have a day that worked exactly as we planned is very, very unlikely. The number of variables that are in PNG is incredible. We have weather is one of our biggest challenges. One of the biggest reasons we wouldn't complete a planned route is because the weather changes so quickly in Papua New Guinea. Clouds can just appear out of nowhere, forced up by the mountainous, and it's really, really challenging to be able to complete that. We also have things like where airstrips aren't in a condition to land when you get there. Maybe some airstrips have conditions on how much rain can have fallen beforehand, and if the pilot overflies the airstrip and sees pools of water on the airstrip, they can't land. So there's lots and lots of things that can unfortunately stop us at completing our mission for that day, but also we have an incredibly talented group of pilots, an amazing set of training rules and procedures to make sure our pilots are trained to be able to make really good decisions, because we work right on the edge of some of the most challenging and most risky areas in PNG, because if you could do it absolutely perfectly 100% of the time, there'd be lots of people who want to make a lot of money out of doing it. But the reason we do it is because those people won't. So we go to places where other people won't go.
But there is a reason why you're prepared to work so hard. Although MAF works to benefit everybody and anybody, wherever you can safely and successfully operate, you're all motivated by a faith, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. We want to see people changed by the love of Christ, and that's why we do what we do. Whether we're delivering noodles and things for the local economy, or whether we are doing a medical evacuation, we see this all as an opportunity to show God's love to these isolated people.
And you're talking about these highly skilled pilots, but they make a sacrifice to work for MAF. They have to take a step back from being commercial pilots who could earn a lot of money. They take a step back and have to get funding, and they make big sacrifices to do this, don't they?
Yeah, we have a team in total, including our Papua New Guinean team, of well over 150 people. And actually, the longer you're there, you see it's not just those who come in from outside that are making sacrifices. You know, each of us, with the skills that God has given us, could go on to earn quite well in industry. But actually, we see Papua New Guinean people as well who could go and use the skills that they've got in Papua New Guinea for more money. So whether it's an international staff member or a national staff member, we see that they are sacrificing hugely to be able to work for Jesus and to see people changed by the love of Christ.
Dom, why are you doing what you do? What draws you to it?
Well, I very definitely felt called to this by God. I talk about God creating a tapestry in our life as he weaves away, and we see the scraggly back of this tapestry. We see all the ends, and we don't really know what's happening. But as I look back through my life, I can see that God has very clearly taken me through some key roles and some key experiences in my life where he's created an opportunity for me to move to PNG and do this role.
A lot of people say, you know, God weaves a tapestry and brings all the threads together, but nobody's ever mentioned the back of it. And that is such a good comparison, because we see all the messy bits. One day we will see the picture that he's created, but for a lot of our life we only see the back bit, don't we?
Absolutely, and I can see times, and I can pinpoint exact times in my life where I was really low because I thought maybe God hadn't blessed me in the way I expected. But when you look back, you see that God can see the front side, and we often only see the building blocks. We see all of the little bits that actually at some point you look back and you start to see glimpses of the thing that God is creating in you, and then he's able to use you.
Now, here on the island, we've got a lot to celebrate in AFD Software's local company, their long and committed involvement to Mission Aviation Fellowship, where they're about to put into service the second plane that they have provided for you. It's enormously generous on the part of one company. But how easy is it for you to get the support? Because you must need a lot of money to keep this whole operation running. How easy or otherwise is it to get that?
You're right. Aviation is a very, very expensive business to be in. If you look down the parts list for a Cessna 208, which is the aircraft that AFD Software have bought for us, just the parts list is incredibly expensive. So what we do comes at a cost, and it is a real challenge because we have 21 programs throughout the world, different countries that we serve in, and we have to be able to serve in those. And the programs aren't money-making, so therefore we require people like AFD Software to be supporting and blessing, and we see actually throughout history God uses people in the church to bring about his kingdom. Right from the moment the tabernacle was being built, we see that it was the people of Israel that was giving the money in order to make the tabernacle. So God uses people in his church to fund his work, and it's great to see that that's what AFD Software is doing.
Now, Papua New Guinea is the area of your influence at the moment. Would you say that's one of the areas of biggest need that MAF goes to?
Oh, I think that's a really hard question to answer. It's an ever-changing picture. At the moment, we are working in Kenya. There's a whole lot of floods in Kenya, a real disaster there. So MAF are able, and it's one of the beautiful things about what we do, is that we're able to take our resources and we're able to deploy them often where they are needed most. So there is a huge need in Papua New Guinea. If you look at the terrain, if you look at the amount of isolation there, it's somewhere around 17% of people rely on an air service in order to get in and out of the place that they live in. So it is absolutely incredibly a place of great need. But I've also been to Timor-Leste and seen the medevacs that they do in order to bring patients back to the hospital. I've been to Arnhem Land and seen where they pick up people from the Aboriginal bush communities and bring them into schools. The work of MAF is great across the world. Every program has a different slant, a different area, and what we really try and do is match what we can do for the local context.
You are flexible enough to respond to a changing world. And we are, more than ever, in a changing world. We're seeing changes in climate conditions that we've never seen before, and we're seeing all kinds of things that can affect isolated communities. So the work is more important than ever, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. We see many, many natural disasters. We see places that are set up to live in one type of environment, and the environment is changing, and the people are struggling to keep up with the way the environment changes. In Papua New Guinea recently, you may have seen in the news, there's a huge landslide which has cut off a number of places, and it just becomes a real challenge for people. And a lot of the time, these are in the middle of nowhere. I think it was 2019, there was a huge earthquake in Papua New Guinea where MAF were able to help taking supplies into the devastation area.
And of course, when things like a big landslide happens, these are in countries who have no capacity to deal with that. They can't send in excavators and sort it all out in the way a developed country would do. They're just left with it. You do it because of your love for Jesus and living out the gospel in a practical way. But do you see a kind of response to that motivation?
I used to work for Rolls-Royce in Derby in England, and when I speak to people and tell them about what I'm going off to do, most of the time it was, well, that is just a crazy thing to do. They think of Papua New Guinea and they still think of cannibalism and lots of things from the dim and distant past. But what they can see is very much the humanitarian aspect. They may not see necessarily the reason we do it is because of Jesus, but they see the humanitarian aspect. But they see the reason we're willing to do it is because we follow Jesus, and because we want to show that when we feel called, it's about stepping out of the boat, isn't it? It's about getting away from our comfort zone and going, well, this is where God has called us to be. And I always pray and I always say that the centre of God's will is the safest place for us to be, because that's exactly where He's planned for us to be.
Oh
for the years your love has kept and guided was composed in 1967 and is regularly sung at celebrations and anniversaries, including the late Queen Elizabeth II's Golden Jubilee. It's yet another written by Timothy Dudley Smith, Anglican priest and bishop, who died earlier this month, but who will live on in the vast collection of popular hymns that he composed. And my thanks to Dom and Isaac Sant, talking about the life-changing work of Mission Aviation Fellowship, and to David Doricott of Ramsey-based business AFD Software, who are donating a second plane to the charity. And we'll be talking more about that when the plane is ready to land and begin its active service in Papua New Guinea. And now, as usual, we'll finish with a look at our notice board. This afternoon at 3 o'clock in Abbeylands Chapel, there'll be a service of congregational praise led by Marion Watterson. These are always very popular services at Abbeylands with a warm welcome for everyone. And today's service will be followed by light refreshments of tea and cakes. That's Abbeylands Chapel this afternoon at 3. And if you're out and about today and tomorrow, I've details of 2 places for MGP refreshments. MGP teas will be served in Bride Parish Church Hall today and tomorrow. They're open from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. on both days, with all proceeds divided between church funds and a chosen charity. And members of Selby Methodist Church will once again be serving MGP refreshments tomorrow, Bank Holiday Monday, when the roads are closed for racing. Go to Argyle, which is at Selby Bridge, just on the corner of St Jude's Road in Selby, where you'll find tea or coffee, filled baps, homemade cakes and a very warm welcome. This Wednesday, the weekly concert in St Thomas's Church here in Douglas will be given by popular musician John Riley, who'll be joined by a few of his equally musical friends. Starting at the usual time of 7:45, it's free admission with refreshments afterwards and a retiring collection. And St Thomas's Church is just off Douglas Promenade, close to the Gaiety Theatre and Villa Marina complex. And this Thursday evening, Castletown Metropolitan Silver Band will be in concert in the Erin Arts Centre in Port Erin. Starting at 7:30, admission is free with a retiring collection, and there'll be refreshments served after the concert. Looking ahead to next weekend, and Castletown Methodist Church invite you to their summer fair and cream tea next Saturday, August the 31st, from 2:30 until 4 p.m. in the schoolroom in Castletown Methodist Church. There'll be refreshments, a raffle and lots of stalls, including children's activities. Admission is just £1 for adults and 50p per child. And finally, the popular Mariners services resume next Sunday, the 1st of September, with the Mariners Choir now in their 50th year. And the first service of this new season is next Sunday evening at 6:30 in Bigarrow Chapel, when the preacher will be Reverend Brian Yardy, the soloist is Mr Paul Costain, and the organist Mr Eric Kelly. The service will, as usual, be followed by refreshments and community hymn singing, and there's a warm welcome for everyone. And I'm afraid that's all that we have time for now, but I'll be back later with Sundown, a warm welcome to our virtual lounge tonight from 9 o'clock onwards. Virtually everything you'll need to round off your day, alongside some very real easy listening music, your requests and dedications, and a visit from Jonathan Io, who'll be popping in to join me for a specially extended local music feature between 10:30 and 11. So, until whenever we meet again, this is Judith saying thank you for listening, and I wish you and those you love a blessed and peaceful week and a very good morning.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.